Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Catholic Education Foundation podcast number 31. And boy, Rich, we're off to the races with this one. So excited. So our special guest is Mr. Kenny McPeek, owner-operator of McPeek Racing, an internationally recognized trainer of thoroughbred horses. And as always, Rich Lecklider, the president of the Catholic Education Foundation. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
Could not be any better.
I like the off to the races pun.
Yes,
that's very good.
I'm going to throw in a couple of those, Kenny. Watch. They're coming. Kenny, what a thrill to have you on our show. Thank you so much for taking the time from your super busy schedule. I know you came just from the barn just now to sit down with Rich and myself. Before we get to the stuff that I think people are really going to hear, the Derby, the Oaks, the awesome Kenny McPeek stories, let's start from your beginning. Tell our audience about your upbringing in Central Kentucky.
Yeah, so I grew up on the south side of Lexington, obviously right in the center of horse country to some extent,
okay.
But mostly grew up in local neighborhood there, and never had a family that owned a farm or such. But I had a pair of grandparents that on my mom's side and my dad's side. So my dad's mother wanted me to go to church with her on Sunday.
Okay.
And subsequently my grandparents on my mom's side wanted me to go to their church.
Okay.
And so my grandmother figured out that if she convinced me that she would bring ponies to the house after church, would I go with her? Okay. Absolutely. So as a young kid, probably 4 or 5 years old, I've actually got a couple of great pictures from then.
Okay.
1966 or 67. But anyway, so Granny won that one. And so I would go to church with Granny, we would have brunch, and then we would ride ponies all afternoon as kids. And so I thought that was awesome. And then my grandfather on my mom's side says, Kenny, would you like to go to the races with me on Saturdays? So yeah, Pop, absolutely. Let's go to the races. So Pop and I would go to the races Saturday. I'd ride horses on Sunday. And
now, is this at Keeneland?
This is Keeneland.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So when I was a kid, and then, I was kind of torn on who I went to church with, but that made it an easy decision. And my grandmother went to Tate's Creek Christian Church,
yeah.
And my grandparents were Good Shepherd Episcopal, which is where I was baptized.
Okay.
Downtown Lexington.
So I understand here that Sunday church services followed going to see the horses, right?
That's how he started his career. That's it.
Yeah,
4 years old.
I started getting enamored with the thoroughbred when I was young.
Yeah.
By the age of probably 10 or 11, I started to learn how to read a pedigree. And for those that don't know much about pedigree, the families are very distinct in the thoroughbred, and where they keep the record keeping is amazing. Actually, you have hundreds of years going backwards of the bloodlines, and so I became so interested in that as a kid. Some kids get into baseball cards or whatever their interests are, and I was horse crazy from a young age. And I remember looking at a lot of horses. I like looking at horses and how they're made and how they move, and there's a very distinct pattern to a lot of it too, and people out there don't realize. But as I got older, I started putting 2 and 2 together, and I would go to the sales, the Keeneland sales with friends, and watch horses walk up and back and study their pedigrees and how they were made and how.
And this is before you ever were purchasing horses, correct?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I got my driver's license, and I took a job on a horse farm for the summers, and did that for a couple of summers, and that was great. They mostly attached me to a weed eater because I was so young, but that's good. That's good for young kid to work hard. And then my mother was a taskmaster. She said, you are going to college and you are going to graduate.
Okay.
And okay, Mom, you're right. I did that. Was a C+, B- student.
Now, where did you go to school?
I went to University of Kentucky.
Okay.
But before that, Tate's Creek High School.
Got it.
And then I did my first horse deal in my sophomore year of college. Turned about a $75,000 investment into a $75,000 profit.
Wow.
Now, where did you get $75,000 as a sophomore in college?
Well, I convinced another guy to give me the money to buy these 6 mares.
Okay, all right.
And then we flipped the mares and turned it into 150 in 2 weeks.
Wow. Kenny, you were
That's pretty good.
Now, listen, Rich and I have a couple more questions on your upbringing before we get to that, because you've kind of hit it on a little bit. So you're kind of world renowned of being able to look at some horses that maybe are undervalued and be able to buy them at a value, a horse that maybe other people overlook. What are you seeing that other people aren't?
Well, back to the University of Kentucky, when I was a freshman in college, I figured out where the ag library was, and in the basement of the ag library was every thoroughbred record, thoroughbred times, blood horse. These are trade magazines ever printed. And I started with the first issue, and by the time I graduated, I had read every issue.
Wow.
Because I just thought it was interesting.
You're a junkie. I mean, it's just...
I would read, I do my accounting for a couple hours and get bored with it, and then I'd pull out a couple of horse magazines, and I'd read those, and they were in bound copy.
Sure.
But anyway, so back to your question, horses are like constellations. So we've all laid in the grass and we've looked up and we've seen the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper.
Okay.
And each constellation has points of reference and where those stars are located, and they don't move, right?
Right.
And so you know what the Big Dipper is, and you know what the Little Dipper is. And of course, there's a lot more constellations we could throw in, but horses are like constellations. They're living, breathing. They have points of reference when you're looking at how they're made. And then you have to, for me, I take my eyes and I shoot a picture of each horse on where the points are. And I haven't counted those lately, but there's probably 20 or 25 points.
Okay.
That's just from the side, and the point of the nose to the top of the poll, the withers, the chest, the depth of the girth, the hip, how the angles of the hind leg work. And the hind leg is a lot of leverage.
Okay.
And when horses move through that correctly and proper, they're good. And if they don't have it, then I don't buy them. And then, then there's the alignment. When the horse walks down and walks back, they have a flow to them, and you have to look at how they move through themselves. And it's like the alignment on your car. If your tires are out of whack, your tires wear bad. You've got to get them realigned.
Sure.
It's the same on a racehorse. The more efficient they move through themselves, the sounder they stay. The longer they run. The longer they run, the more money they make. So there's all this little. Yeah, and I can walk into.
Awesome.
They call me Mr. 7 Seconds because I'll walk up and look at a horse and that's not the one. And
you know in 7 seconds.
Oh yeah.
Now, do you have a photographic memory?
Yes.
Because I could tell, because you're talking about how you take a picture and then you kind of put it all together. I mean, it takes somebody extremely intelligent to be able to do that, Rich.
Well, it's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, and you've been doing this for many years. I mean, you've been at this a while.
Yeah. The other thing is that I started with modest priced horses in the beginning, so I really had to outsmart a lot of the guys that came in with bigger budgets, and so I learned to do that. And then now, as I've gotten older, I've gotten more budgets and more opportunity and bigger clients, but I still stick to the value. I don't like throwing money at the game. Fast horse is a fast horse, and they don't know who they're by or who they're out of, and I don't get enamored with the big names. And every now and then there'll be a really well-bred horse that's got all the right parts in the right places, and we'll spend a little more than we normally do. But I would say I like to protect my clients' money. Now,
is there a certain element of guessing here? Or are you pretty good at knowing, hey, I know what I'm getting when I'm buying this?
Well, it's a lot of failure,
okay.
but you get the successes that makes up for the failure.
Sure.
So I'll tell you what I'd tell most clients that are new to racing horses. The rule of 5. For every 5 horses you buy, even if it's the perfect constellation with the perfect movement,
right?
1 can't run. 1 refuses to run. And it's not any different than ball players sometimes. 1 gets hurt.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's nothing major. 1's a nice horse you have a little bit of fun with.
Right.
And then 1's a really nice horse that helps you forget the other 4.
Gotcha. So that's the rule of 5.
Yes. So the 1 that can't run, we try to find rehomes. We find them places where they can be 3-day eventers or dressage horses. Always find them a good second career.
Sure.
The ones that get hurt, same thing. We need to make sure that they get healed up, and then we rehome them. Some horses get claimed off of us. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then you have the horses that some can't breathe correctly, which is There's surgeries for some that you can fix that, and some you can't fix.
Right.
But my job is that I do the acquisition. I help with the process. My office handles all the communication. I deliver good news and bad news, probably more bad than good, and then I help them exit strategy the 4 that don't work out, and then we try to have a really good time with the one that does.
Rich, I'm fascinated here. We can do this all day. All right. You mentioned ball players, so I'm going to go back to your childhood a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So coming up in Lexington, did you play in any of kind of the Catholic youth leagues that Lexington had to offer from a sports standpoint?
Well, through a series of events, as I got a little older, my mom wanted a church a little closer to the house.
Okay.
So I was, we moved to St. Michael's, another Episcopal church, close.
Okay. Got it.
A little closer, didn't have to go all the way in town. And St. Michael's, unfortunately, only had, I think, 8 or 9 kids there.
Oh, so not many.
So we couldn't outfit a basketball team.
All right.
And I was a really good basketball player, really loved playing basketball.
Okay.
I think that's where my feet went bad over the years. Sure. But, rolled and broke my 5th metatarsal at one point. But anyway, I was, I like to say I was a mercenary basketball player for the Catholics and the Baptists.
Okay. Because
St. Michael's didn't have a team, they let me play for Christ the King. And so I'd go to Christ the King, and I played for them for 3 or 4 seasons. And then I lived closer to the Baptists and Emmanuel Baptist in Lexington on Tates Creek Road. And Emmanuel Baptist, I would play and practice there during the winter, and then they recruited me over to play for them.
Okay.
And I had to go to spaghetti dinner on Wednesday night, and I couldn't dance with any of the girls.
That's right, because it's Baptist. That's right. Now, Kenny, did you play at Tates Creek?
I played high school football at Tates Creek, but I probably was more cut out for basketball.
Okay.
That's another story. We had 850 in our graduating class, and when you can only outfit 15 ball players, and it was pretty tough to. Some guys got excluded. I was one of them.
I understood. Yeah, it's always tough, man. There's cut lines everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so Kenny, you've been through the thoroughbred racing industry for a long time here. You've been doing it obviously since you're a kid. Tell us about the early days and some of the highs and lows that have come along the way.
Well, I really didn't intend on becoming a horse trainer. It was well, I could give you the longer versions. I finished my last class at the University of Kentucky, and my roommates threw a small party for me, and I was up until 4 a.m. with the group, and I was sitting on a sofa with a good friend of mine who actually works for me today, Ronnie Long, and I told him, I said, wow, I've got to get a job, and he says, well, what do you love? And I said, oh, that's easy. I love horse racing. And he slapped me on the shoulder and said, well, good, do it. I'm going to bed. And it was 4:05 a.m. and I thought for a few minutes, and I grabbed an army jacket, pair of boots, and a hat, and got in my car and drove to Keeneland right then.
At 4:05 in the morning.
Yeah,
right after your last day of school.
Pulled in Keeneland before 5 a.m. Walked up and I wanted to know who the best trainers that were here already, and Wayne Lucas was coming in but hadn't shipped in, and then Shug McGahee.
Yeah.
Was there, and Shug went to the same high school as I did, was a few years older than me, and he hired me, and I got a hot walking job straight out of college, and my mother was furious. She was like, "You're doing what?" And I said, "Yeah, I know. I have a degree in accounting and finance," and she was not thrilled. So I did that for a couple of months, and I wasn't making enough really to sustain myself, and so I left the job. Decided I would try to utilize my degree a little bit. They wanted me to get some sales experience, which I did,
right,
and some insurance. And then one day my dad called, and for those that remember the mid 80s, interest rates were 18% in the 80s, so it was pretty brutal doing any kind of business. And he was in the building business, and let's just say he was having a really hard time. And he said, "Can you help me take care of these 3 horses for a week or 2 till I can figure out what to do with them?" Sure, you do what you help your dad out, right? So we went to work, and we'd meet out there every morning at 5 a.m. and take care of the horses. The first week he showed up on time every day, and the second week he was 2 hours late, and I was already done by the time he got there. Mm-hmm. And the third week he didn't show up at all. And then the fourth week I said, well, I thought this was a week or 2. And the next thing you know, I had one of the horses ready to run. And there was a trainer next to us, and we had to pay him to run the horses.
Okay.
So I said to my father, I said, this isn't working out well. I said, I'm doing all the work. You haven't paid me since I got started.
Right.
He's getting paid. And I said, somebody needs to get a trainer's license. And so he made an appointment to go get his trainer's license.
Your dad?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the morning of the test, he decided he wasn't going to go. And I said, well, that's ridiculous. I said, if you're not going to go, I'm going to go. And so I went down there and told them they had typoed the name. It was supposed to be Ken, not Ron. And they let me take the test.
And that's how you became a horse trainer.
Yeah, and really, and if I didn't win, I didn't get paid because he didn't have any money.
Oh, I get it.
And I won 10 out of my first 50 runners, and people started calling me, asking me to take horses for them. And next thing you know, I was up to 10, and other people were
Wow.
bringing, and they weren't good horses. They were average, very average to bad horses. But I was young and hungry and skinny and willing to do the work.
So you're mid-20s, between 25 and 30 doing all this, right?
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. I got my license. I was 23.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's been a you talk about the ups and the downs. My relationship with my father was never great. He never paid me all those years, which was frustrating. At the same time, I got over it. I had one client, actually, a guy sent me 15 horses. Maybe the second year I trained, beat me out every dime of it. I think he owed me over $100,000.
Wow.
And never paid me at all. And then,
Ouch.
yeah, no, that was tough. And I was basically underwater financially.
Yeah, because you're footing the bill for everything.
Yeah. I had gotten on my feet actually before that guy and bought a small home, and then I couldn't pay the mortgage, which I got through. I managed to make it, but that guy, I see him every now and then.
I'll guarantee it.
But
he probably regrets it now, though.
But yeah, and then I've had some good breaks. I met some wonderful people over the years that gave me opportunity. Ray Cottrell, who some may know in here, raced a lot at Churchill Downs, was one of the leading owners there. I trained for Ray early on. He probably was fourth or fifth year. And
Okay.
Roy Monroe out of Lexington was another guy in the tool and die business, and look much more good than bad, but have definitely hit some valleys. It was never easy.
Who do you attribute learning how to train horses to?
Well, I can't give that answer because I probably pulled a lot of ideas from a lot of different people. I pretty much self-taught, and I do a lot of what I do on instinct, but and I think you have to have that with a horse.
Totally agree.
Yeah, I don't think there's a formula for it so much as once you learn, what a horse needs, and you get a feel for what they do or how they're doing.
Okay.
I'm obsessed about how they're eating, and like I said, I've kind of built my own program over the years, but I pulled ideas from different guys, different trainers. Locally here, Bernie Flint was somebody I knew well back in the early 80s when I started, and he lives in Hurstbourne here. And then I could give you a long one. Carl Nafsker was a big influence on me.
All right.
Alan Jerkins was a good friend. I don't know if you know the Hall of Famer Alan Jerkins, and a long list of others. But,
Gotcha.
But always was very attentive, trying to pick good ideas and trying to get an idea of how I wanted to
formulate your own style.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, there was never anybody that, Wayne Lucas is somebody I really look up to. Regretfully, I never worked for him, but today he's a good friend. And he didn't come up under anybody either.
Yeah.
He was another college degreed guy that loved it and worked hard and
figured out his own way.
Yes, he did. And Woody Stevens never worked under anybody. There's a lot. Bob Baffert never worked under anybody. Bob's a good friend of mine also. So you don't really need to have to come up under anybody, but I think you have to have a natural instinct, and I think it's that feel for horses that comes to you. You either have it or you don't.
All right. So in 1995. You had a horse finish second in the Kentucky Derby to Thunder Gulch. You remember that horse?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Which one was that? I'm testing your memory here.
Tejano Run?
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. What was that like? That had to have been incredible.
Well, I don't know how much time we have, but a bit of a long story. Roy Monroe was a guy that was a local businessman in Lexington, and he had 3 horses that he had sent. Well, another guy had sent, and he'd put Roy in as a silent partner. And they were 3 of the worst horses that I had ever seen. I mean, they were really bad. And Roy would come out, and he asked my opinion one day. What do you think of these 3 I've got with you? I said, well, honestly, they're really, really not very good horses. And he went to Ben, his partner, and gave his share back.
Okay.
And so Ben fired me the next day, and Roy came out apologizing, and I said, well, look, I mean, I told you the truth, but I've been penalized for it, but I'm okay with it. I mean, I wasn't going to win any races with those horses. And this all comes to Tahana Run. So I told Roy, he said, how do I get a good horse? I said, I'd really like to go to the yearling sale. If you'd let me have an opportunity to go buy some horses for you, I'd like to do that. And so it goes back to me learning how to buy.
Sure. Your constellation.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Roy gave me a $6,000 budget, which is nothing in my business. I mean, and so I told him, I said, I'm going to find you the very best $6,000 horse I can buy. And I worked it and went through 600 or 700 horses looking, and I plucked 2 horses. I got it down to 2 that I thought we could buy, and I bought a filly for him named Warside.
Okay.
And she ran 1st, 2nd, and 3rd in stake races in New York, California, Chicago, nationwide.
It was incredible.
She went everywhere.
All right.
And anyway, so that was the first really good horse I ever had. So Roy starts getting a little confidence in me and says, think you could find me a Kentucky Derby horse?
Yeah.
I said, well, if you'll give me a little more money, I think I could do it.
Yeah.
So he gave me a $20,000 budget.
Okay.
And I bought him Tahana Run.
There you go.
Yeah, and so that horse went on to make $1.2 million and 2nd in the Kentucky Derby. So I think life's about opportunities. And he gave me a small opportunity, and I capitalized on it. And then my career's kind of kicked on from there. Tahana Run put me on the map.
Yep.
Yeah, that was your first Derby run.
Yeah. And then other people started noticing that I was pretty good at it, and they'd call, and even with bigger budgets. And then I had Harlan's Holiday, who I didn't buy but trained in 2002, and Take Charge Lady was one of the top fillies in the nation. More budgets, and just been kind of keep rolling, keep working.
So 2002 was the Belmont Stakes, right?
Yeah, that year I had Take Charge Lady, Repent, Harlan's Holiday, and then Sarava subsequently won the Belmont.
Yeah. 70-1 shot.
Yeah, longest shot in Belmont history.
I've always wondered this, Kenny. This is probably a terrible question to ask a trainer, but are you guys allowed to bet? Like, do you feel good about something? Are you placing bets on these horses?
I never bet.
You never bet?
Well, when I say never, every now and then, I bet on Mystic Dan in the Derby because I thought the odds were ridiculous.
That was a good bet.
Yeah, but me myself, I don't gamble, and the reason is because my father was an addicted gambler.
Okay, fair enough.
And I watched it probably being raised by an alcoholic, and it's this is not productive, and he really struggled with it, and he would bet on anything all the time, and the horses were his gambling addiction, and one of many. I mean, whether it was baseball, basketball, football, he bet on everything all the time. But he fought bankruptcy his whole life too.
Gotcha. Yep.
So anyway, no, I don't bet.
Do some trainers bet on their horses?
They may. I honestly don't even know.
Gotcha. Interesting.
It clouds my judgment. I'm trying
that
to
makes sense. Sure.
Trying to win a race.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to cash a bet.
Yeah.
Right.
If my client asks me, should I bet on this horse? Shouldn't I bet on this horse? I can usually give them good info. Although, how do you know the other horses in the race and whether they're doing as well or better? And then you've got to have the jockey that does a good job, and sometimes a jockey doesn't have a good trip, and sometimes a worse horse wins a race it shouldn't, and so that's how they build the Churchill Downs.
Oh, yeah,
the Keenelands is by cashing your ticket.
Absolutely.
So I know better.
All right, let's talk about one of the greatest accomplishments of all of horse racing. You won the Kentucky Oaks and the Kentucky Derby in the same year. This past year, and the last time that happened was in 1952. It's only happened 4 times in history. first of all, tell me about the experience. How'd you do it? Just let our listeners know how that felt.
Well, of course, amazing. The interesting thing about it is that I had been kind of around the bullseye on the Oaks. I had been second 3 times, which was a little frustrating. So I knew that I knew the formula, and I knew that we had big chance this year. I told my wife, I said, they won't beat the filly. Actually, my quote was, they said, well, how do you like your chances? I said, they better bring a bear because I've got a grizzly.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And of course, she launched, and so that was pretty much expected.
And that was Torpedo Anna.
Yeah, I expected her to win, and she might very well be horse of the year. Okay. And she might be better than all the colts too. So she's something. So the Oaks I thought was a bit of a given, and the Derby was one of those. This horse is really doing well. He drew a great post, and he got a gray ride. Mm-hmm. And when you have those three things come together, we had to get a little lucky to get to the wire first. And I told my wife 3 weeks out, I said, we can win both races. And she said, you think? And I said, yeah, I feel really good. We can win both races. Now, when they were going to the gate, I bet 100 across that day.
Okay. All right.
Mystic Dan, because he was 18-1, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. He should be about 4-1.
Right.
And that's when I might play a few dollars.
Yeah, when you know that they're grossly undervalued.
Yeah, I stuck $300 in a buddy's pocket. I said, go bet that. He came back. I think I made 3,000 something.
I hope
that. But I made 300,000 on the win.
Let's go. Okay, so you've won the Belmont. You've won the Preakness. You won the Kentucky Oaks. You won the Kentucky Derby. Which one has been the most fulfilling? Which one's been the best, the coolest?
Oh, certainly the Derby.
Okay.
It was the biggest purse. But Sarava was a bit of a miracle horse. I still kind of question how that horse managed to win, although I knew you don't run one unless they're doing well. Swiss Skydiver was an amazing filly. She won the Preakness and one of the few fillies to ever win the Preakness.
That was in 2020.
And they thought I was crazy when I ran her. And she wins the race, beat the Derby winner. She was beyond special. I probably, as a person that handled her more than any horse of the group. I typically walked her every day and was around her a lot, and she was ultra intelligent. And then Torpedo Anna has just dominated over her group. She's actually been one of the easier ones we've handled. And Mystic Dan. Well, the cool thing about Mystic Dan is that, and I could throw back even a longer story, but he was raised on my farm in Lexington.
Okay, so I was going to ask you that if you've had them from the beginning, or how you came across Mystic Dan and Torpedo Anna.
Yeah, well. Torpedo Anna I bought for $40,000 in the Phasig yearling sale, which is another inexpensive one.
Yeah.
Swiss Skydiver was only $35,000, but Mystic Dan I bought his mother for $50,000 for a group out of Arkansas, the Mystic Dan owners, and they were in between whether they were going to keep her, and I convinced them to keep her as a broodmare. And I said she'll make a good mare. She was solid. She was healthy, sound. She wasn't quite fast enough to call her a really top horse. But when we bred her, my recommendation, and I do that, I do the matings for people and say, okay, you need to breed this mare to that stallion because you're going to get, you want to move, well, you want to added influence.
Yeah, sure.
And she didn't have a lot of speed. I said, breed her to the same bottle or same form, constellation, but you need one that was really fast.
Okay.
And so we bred her to Golden Sense and Mystic Dan's here. But the whole process of buying her, breeding her, or racing her, breeding her, foaling him, all at the farm in Lexington has been, I mean, probably the most satisfying of all by far.
Well, I'd say so.
Anybody here believe in higher powers, right?
Yeah.
Well, listen to this.
It's our business.
Listen to this.
It is right. Okay. It is our business.
So it gives me goosebumps still. So my mom, I might cry. So my mom went to the Kentucky Derby in 1960, and she was 19 years old.
Okay.
And so she saved the program. And I didn't know anything about that. So she goes to the Derby, and the program was pristine. She gives it to me 3 days before, or 3 months before she dies.
Okay.
And she was 67
Right.
at the time. So the program, she hands me the program, and let me backtrack. I had bought a horse farm. I bought Magdalena Farm a year before that.
Okay.
And so she gives me the program, and I open the program, and on the cover is Tommy Lee. Well, Tommy Lee is buried at my farm.
Okay.
I actually own him.
What,
Right.
59 Derby winner?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she gives me this program, and she's been saving it all these years, and she never gives it to me. Now, here I own this farm, and my mom gives me the program. Well, the winner of the Derby was Venetian Way. Venetian Way was conceived on my farm
Yep.
and wins the Derby. And the sire of Venetian Way is buried on my farm, too. Now, this is after I'd already bought
You
it.
already bought
and
it.
She gives me
Yeah.
that. And I thought, well, that's just, I mean, what are the chances of that?
Unbelievable.
Right.
That's
so,
fantastic.
So I framed the program, and we've got a nice, it's put together really well and saved. And for us to take Magdalena Farm and start with that, and then breed a Kentucky Derby winner on it.
Special.
In relatively short order too, yeah. But I think I've always kind of channeled, this is what I always wanted to do. I think I've written down I wanted to breed and raise a Kentucky Derby winner. I wrote that down years ago.
We're going to get to that on the list thing. I think that's important. So, Rich, he just mentioned and told an unbelievable story here about the higher power, how this is something that he's kind of manifested in winning the Kentucky Derby. What's your thoughts on that?
Listen, it's like I said before, we're in the higher power business,
Yeah.
right? The Catholic Education Foundation. We want a kid and a family to be part of a Catholic school community that wants to do it and
Right.
can't afford it. And we've seen so many transformative experiences for these kids over the years. And I'm in my 11th year right now, and Julie on our team's in her 19th year at the foundation, and the stuff we've seen, the experiences we've seen with these kids and these families, they're fantastic stories, sort of transformative stories, but they're not unusual. They happen all the time.
All the time.
And I think what Kenny's talking about is that same kind of transformation, that same higher power in his life. Look what he's done.
Yeah.
It works.
It absolutely works. All right, Kenny, you're hot walking a horse right out of college, right? You went over to Keeneland. At that point, did you ever dream you could be a Triple Crown winning trainer?
No, not at that time. No, I actually probably thought maybe I would own horses. And like I said, I really didn't intend on becoming a trainer. It's just kind of a path that I fell into. But what I found was that I really enjoyed the competition of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you were playing basketball or baseball or whatever, but the competitive aspect of it and trying to figure out how to win a race, it's a bit of a big boys chess match, and it's trying to figure out timing and how horses finish, and for me, it's just the ultimate challenge.
Pretty awesome.
To get from point A to point B faster than the other.
It's like a huge strategy game, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's a huge strategy game.
Yeah. Back to the constellations. How a horse is made is going to dictate how much ground he covers, and then you've got to hope that they have quickness, and then they got to have the bravery, and there's a lot to it. People think they just throw a saddle on and run them in circles. It's not the case at all.
Kenny, so how did you meet your wife, Sherry? And one more step to that, how important is your family, and how big of an influence do they play in the success in your life right now?
Well, I've never been in a better place than I am now. Married, this is my second marriage, and Sherry's as well. She's an amazing woman, and certainly I don't think I'm here today without all the support she gives me. Mm-hmm. She takes care of so many things that I can or won't. but and she's so high energy, and she's She's a here local Louisville girl. Yeah, it's actually what I like to laugh. It's an intercollegiate marriage. I went to UK and she went to U of L.
Okay, there you go.
So a couple days a year, I wear blue, she wears red, and we sit on opposite ends of the couch.
Amen.
But we have fun with that. But she's amazing. She's
And she grew up going to Catholic schools here in Louisville, right?
She did. St. Rayfield, I believe, and
Okay.
Assumption.
There you go.
Yeah. And our daughter goes to St. Margaret Mary, and we've named a horse Good Catholic Girl.
You have a horse right now?
Well, yeah. I mean, we don't have her now, but years back we named her Good Catholic
gotcha.
Girl.
I love that.
That is awesome.
We've got one in the barn now named Consecrate.
Okay. Okay.
See, he's got it all down.
He does have it all down.
He knows it all.
Kenny, I understand that you're a keeper of lists, and you just kind of mentioned this before. Share a little bit about that with our audience.
Yeah, well, I've got a lot of things to worry about every day, and I do. I'm a list maker, and I like checking boxes and getting things done. And I've also read a book. I don't know if you ever heard of it, Magic of Believing.
Okay.
And I think anything you channel your energy towards, you can accomplish, and you have to work at it, and you have to focus on it. And I've always written down things that I wanted to do. Would like to see places I'd like to see or experiences I'd like to have. Top of my list is taking great care of my horses and my family every day.
Mm-hmm.
That's number one on my list.
Mm-hmm.
There might be daily tasks that I concern myself with. I mean, I have a lot of things going on. We have a farm in Lexington, we have a farm in Ocala, and then I have a team of people that I have to lean on. So we have tasks lists for each different entity, and then I delegate to people that work for me. Hey, who's taking care of the tractor, and did somebody fix the water line in paddock 3 because there's a horse out there, or a tree went down. So there's so many things to deal with every day. And so it's not unusual for 1 day, 2 days a week, we sit down, okay, who's taking care of that? And then I delegate the details out. And then some things I have to handle myself, of course. But, my wife makes fun of me. I would delegate working out to somebody else if I could get away with it.
Work smarter, not harder, right?
Now, you work 7 days a week?
No, I take Sundays off.
1 day off?
Yeah, Sunday's family day. We do not, I don't train on Sunday. I tell everybody, don't call me on Sunday. I will not be calling you back until Monday or Tuesday. I think it's one of those days that's sacred, that
Amen.
You need to take the time to spend with family. I learned that lesson from the Australian trainers, because I've traveled worldwide to see racing. And Australian trainers don't train on Sunday, and they typically don't race on Sunday either, which I think is brilliant. And for that matter, I don't think American racing really has thought that through very well. They race on Sunday pretty much everywhere, and I myself don't like it. But I still have to go saddle horses on Sundays, and sometimes I go and sometimes I don't. But you've got to have that day of rest, and you have to have that day of whether it's my daughter or my wife, and
Sure.
Yeah, that's normal.
So you mentioned that you have a daughter, I believe you said, currently at St. Margaret Mary. Is that right?
Yes, 8-year-old.
8-year-old. That's okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's keeping you young there,
I'm
Kenny.
61. Yeah,
That's
she's
keeping
8.
you young.
She's a blast.
Now at St. Margaret Mary, actually, Father Hammer over there helped kind of make this connection for us.
Yeah, he did.
Tell us about St. Margaret Mary. Tell us about your connection there.
Well, it's actually more Sherry's connection than myself. We had a choice. We could probably have taken Annie to collegiate. My older daughter went to collegiate.
Got it.
Here in town.
Yep. Great school.
But Sherry was very confident that St. Margaret Mary would be a great spot, and it has been.
Awesome.
And we've thoroughly enjoyed being members there, and it's gotten me reconnected to the church.
Yep.
Because it's close to the house, and because we take Sundays, and then now Annie's really, really loves every day. I think regularly she's been going this summer to a little Bible studies.
Awesome. That's great.
She's amazing, and we had her first communion recently.
Okay, all right.
And I admittedly, because I have worked so many years and I travel so much, it's hard for me to get to church regularly. But we're definitely going more since we've been in St. Margaret Mary's circles.
Rich, while we're on the topic of Catholic schools, give us an update on tuition assistance programs in our Catholic schools right now and how the enrollments are shaping up for the fall term.
It's going gangbusters. We're still granting scholarships for this coming fall. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's July. We're still in that business. Mm-hmm. Last year, we helped 3,700 kids. That's a record. I think we're on pace this year to exceed that.
Right.
We won't know that until September, but people are busting the doors down. We granted $8 million of scholarships last year. It's going to be over that number this year for sure.
Yep.
So we're excited about that. And Teague, here's the thing. This will be our 10th year. We're not done yet, but this will be our 10th year where every family that applies to us that qualifies for an award gets an award. We don't say no to anybody.
Huge.
The answer is yes. And again, a little bit of a prediction here. When the enrollment count goes down in August, we think this will be the 4th year in a row that Catholic elementary school enrollments are up over their previous year. You don't see that anywhere.
Yeah.
So the kind of the partnership that we have with the school office, with all the schools, with our donors, that's all kind of coming together to open that experience for more families that can't afford it. I love it.
And speaking of donors, there's plenty of room to still get involved there, right? I mean, if you're listening, and it's a pretty worthy cause, wouldn't you say, Rich?
Yeah, look, we have to, like most businesses, we have to grow every year. We can't have a down year because that means we can't help somebody that needs help. So we got to be up every year.
Yeah. All right, Kenny, you mentioned Magdalena Farm. It's got a rich history, and right before we went on air, you were talking about where the name came from. I think it dates back to the Revolutionary War, right?
Yes. Well, so not only Kentucky Derby winners conceived and foaled there now, so that farm, the history is pretty amazing. Captain John Shealy was a Revolutionary War soldier, received a 2,000-acre land grant in Lexington, came to Lexington and married a girl 9 days shy of her 16th birthday named Magdalena.
Okay.
And so Captain Shealy and Magdalena, their children and many of their grandchildren are all buried on a hill plot there on the farm. And when I purchased the farm, the cemetery was completely overgrown and covered. You didn't even know that there were headstones in there. Mm-hmm. So we went in there with weed whackers and cleared the ground and got down and realized that there were headstones that had fallen over. We dug them all up, had them refurbished, had them stood back up, and realized that this is a pre-Civil War family.
Right. And
Magdalena lived right into the early portion of the Civil War.
Okay.
Several of her boys died in the Civil War.
Wow.
And the whole thing is just...
It's a lot of history there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and the previous owners of the property had just neglected it. They just had let it go, and we found that once again, in a higher power. Of course, Magdalena is a name from the Bible, right?
Mm. Oh yeah,
yeah. So and on the property was one of the first, and I can't remember if it was the first Presbyterian or Episcopal church in Kentucky.
Was actually on that property.
Yeah, it was on the property in Lexington there. And I'd have to look up that detail. But I've recently hired someone to do the land grant research, and I hired somebody to do the ancestry of the cemetery and the people there. And I'd love to think it could be like a Yellowstone, but the series Yellowstone.
Cool. Oh yeah, you gotta love that show.
And then you throw in the horse racing and the Revolutionary War and the Civil War. There's a lot of action to be played out there.
When you want to put together a TV show, you know where to come to.
Wouldn't that be
Kenny.
something?
I got you. We're ready to rock and roll there. All right, so listen, July 2nd is known as Kenny McPeek Day in Lexington, right?
Yeah.
Pretty cool. That had to have been an awesome experience.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I couldn't even envision that.
What's next for Kenny McPeek?
There's a lot of work to do still. I manage almost 250 horses. Wow. So every day is full.
Wow.
But I'm thrilled that we won the Derby and the Oaks, and those are certainly boxes checked and great experiences. I'd really like to win the English Derby and the English Oaks.
How cool is that? Okay, I was going to ask if there was a race that you haven't won. That all right?
Yeah, no trainer has ever won both.
Okay.
Yeah, and the English Derby is the original Derby,
right?
And
where's that ran?
It's run in Epsom Downs in England.
Got it.
In London, and I've been there, walked the courses. I actually took a filly once for the English Oaks several years back, about 5 or 6 years ago, and that was unfortunately she got loose before the race. She didn't get a chance to run, but I've got an idea of how to do it, and I'd like to do that. I think that's
cool.
Kind of one of those mountains I haven't climbed, and nobody's even tried from the United States, but I think it's very doable.
That's super cool, Kenny. Listen, we can't thank you enough for joining us today. I mean, our listeners are going to be absolutely thrilled with this podcast, and hopefully it opens our podcast up to a whole new demographic of listeners as well. So we can't thank you enough for being here.
Can I throw something in?
Please.
For sure.
So those out there that don't follow horse racing and maybe have a little bit of interest in doing that, there's an app. Everybody nowadays has iPhones and Androids. I invented an app called Horses Now. So if you go on your iPhone or your Android or a Google Play Store and just simply type in Horses Now, you can download the app. It's really simple. It's a very easy thing to use. You can enter entries, results, in some cases replays, in some cases live racing. But when you download it and you register, you can follow your favorite horses, trainers, jockeys, racetracks. And so it's very simple. It's kind of like the ESPN Score Center app, but it's strictly for horse racing. And this is one of those little pet projects that I did. What started out as a small investment turned into a much larger one. But we've had 1 million downloads in 217 countries.
Cool.
It's been translated into English, Spanish, Portuguese, and probably going to go Chinese next.
All right.
And it's for me, I think we need to do a better job growing our sport. I think people have a lot of misconceptions about how horses are handled. From my perspective, horses are doted over and loved on, and the amount of care that they get is amazing. And people, if they understand more about how they're bred and how they're made and how they're handled, I think they'd really, they'd love it. And I think the industry's done, in some cases, a poor job connecting to the masses, and like I say, racing on Sundays, I think a bad idea. I think that's one thing that the industry needs to approach. But they tend to look at the bottom dollar first, and we know how that goes.
So if you're listening to our podcast, and maybe you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever it may be, I'll have a link in the description of the podcast, so you can go download the Horses Now app. So it sounds like a really great thing, Kenny. That's really cool. You're speaking my language now in the app world. But if you're interested in downloading that app, just check our description. The link will be right there for you. Rich, this could be our biggest podcast yet. I mean, we've got some that are over 100,000 listens, but this is going to be pretty cool.
I think so.
So at every Catholic school and every family in need needs to know that at the Catholic Education Foundation,
The answer is yes.
Kenny, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Kenny,
My pleasure.
You're the best. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.